finished the tutorial. I'm stoked. I don't know about you guys, but I am stoked. Benn TK, magician, Houdini, After Effects wizard. This ever gets back to you, bro, I would literally just like to sit in a corner with a dunce cap on and just watch you think. That would be awesome for me.
But these are my recreation clothes.
So yeah, there's that. Throwing that your way, but bro, mad props to your creative thinking and thought process. Just phenomenal job. Okay, I am going to go ahead and sell my project file. If you want a 100% under the hood look into how I did both of those movements through the eye, into those trains and the doors, blowing up the girl, into the other train, and then moving through the wall of things and all of that stuff. If you want it all, I'm gonna sell the entire thing for 20 bucks. I'm gonna be building a masterclass for Intro to After Effects for filmmakers. On top of just helping funding this channel to do more tutorials that you guys actually want to see. But yes, we are going to study images and bring those into our creatives, and that's what this tutorial is all about. So I hope you guys are ready. You're fastened in, whatever it is you want to call it, but yeah, without any further ado, I don't think I have anything else to catch you guys up on. So yeah, let's rock this beast. Let's do this. All right.
So the time has come. We are finally knocking out the Benn TK transition from his Europe video, and there are quite a few moving pieces to this bad boy. So the first thing that you're gonna notice is that if you downloaded all of the assets, you're gonna have the 1080 version of the clip that I shot going into Whitney's eye. You're going to have the birds clip. You're gonna have, you won't have the bumper video. You guys can place that with whatever you want. You're gonna have that initial Pexels video drone shot, who we're gonna give credit to, that you guys see there. The eye photo, and then the flower, the hat itself that I cut out in Photoshop, all of the images used to create the moving components of the wall, and then you guys just need to pick up a smoke clip. So outside of that, everything else is provided for you guys. So yeah, that being said, let us go ahead and jump in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just copy the original clip over into a new composition. So let's just go ahead and copy you, create new composition. We'll call this main new, and let's just, yeah, 20 seconds is fine. And then I'm just gonna paste that clip directly in now. But here's the thing, there's two scenarios that you could use, and how Benn TK approached it was a little bit different because he had a good push into the eye. My gimbal was, my aperture was set to 3.5, so things started blowing out really quick. So we're gonna approach this by freezing the frame and then pushing in at the part where the camera seems to do that and starts to pick up towards the eye. So right about here, we're gonna actually freeze that frame, and that's where our scene is gonna break, and we're gonna do all the magic. So again, we have our 1080 clip on the canvas right here, you can see, and then it stops. If I go ahead right here and then I bring out my clip, you can see that it continues to play through, and I go into the eye, things get blown out, and we don't need that, that's not good. So right about here or so, I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate my clip, and then I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna hit time, freeze frame on this bad boy, and then we're going to go ahead, zoom in here, bring that down to where that clip starts, and now we can expand the rest out. So now when you play through, you've got this freeze frame right there that's happening, and this is perfect. This is all we really need. All right, so the next part is fairly easy. All we have to do is go ahead and create a new null object, and we're gonna go ahead and trim it at the part where we want the null object to pick up on the freeze frame area. And this null object is going to be the transition movement. We got all of our stuff titled out and good to go. So here's the thing on our null. We're gonna wanna go ahead and set a position and scale frame, and then we're going to go ahead and we're wanting our freeze transition to, or our freeze frame to parent to that null because we want it to move into it. So now what we're gonna do is, if you hit U on our null transition movement, we wanna go out a few frames. Let's go out here a little bit, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna scale this bad boy into the eye and reposition it. So just kind of move it and then reposition it accordingly. Key is to get the pupil like lined up, and once you got the majority of the black there, you're pretty much set and ready to roll. So you can see now when you pick up the pace, or when you play it back, you've got this really abrupt kind of shoot in. Now here's the key: if you go ahead on your freeze frame layer and you hit, you go ahead and set your motion blur to it, and you play it back, you can kind of see that it kind of cleans up and forces in really relatively quickly, which is exactly what we're looking for. But let's go ahead and clean up our animation. Let's go ahead and easy ease, F9 all of those keys, and we're going to control this just a little bit better. All right, guys, so I've got mine set up, and again, it's not flawless right now, but it's close enough. This is kind of what my curves look like. You know, just a nice ease in, picks up, and then slows back down just a tad bit, so that when we get to the eye, we can go ahead and transparency fade that sucker off. This is really key to have the null set up, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and bring out a high res eye, and we're gonna match this sucker up right about there. And that's gonna give us exactly what we're looking for. So if you go into your assets panel and you bring out the photo titled eye or whatever it is, eye photo, and let's just call this eye image or whatever. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take the photo of this chick over here, and we're going to cut out her eye. So go ahead and cut that out, and you're gonna see this is going to be really weird, right? Go ahead and hold Control, double click the pan behind tool. It'll reset your anchor point to the middle of that eye, which is gonna be exactly what we need. Reselect your, all right, so what we're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and set your transparency, bring this sucker down, and we're gonna try to line this eye up as best we can. So go ahead and hit scale, and we're going to scale it up until we feel like that eye looks remotely similar and is covering that same area. And then what we're gonna do before you do anything is you're gonna want to go ahead and set that eye up to the null. So go ahead and parent it to the null as well, so that that eye is parented to the null and it's making the same movement. So you'll see right here, if I kind of pull back that, all right, her eye is now lining up, and we have this high res eye moving into the image, and that's exactly what we wanted to do. Okay, cool. So now that we have the eye image, the first thing that we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna go in here, set our transparency on this sucker, back up, yeah, it's gonna look really weird, and then go hit F, and we're gonna feather this guy like wildfire. And then we are going to go ahead and hit MM, and for expansion, we're gonna bring that down into the eye a bit more. All right, so you have something that looks like that, right? It looks really, really, really bad. All right, cool. So the first thing that we're gonna wanna do is to go ahead and set the transparency on this sucker to 0. All right, and then what we're gonna wanna do is, as it's coming in, right about here, we want it to start kind of moving in. Maybe we have something like 80%, and we've got this eye kind of moving in, and we can even start it a little bit later and bring him in a little bit more. All right, so the goal is to be right there as well. And again, what we might have to do is scale that up a little bit more. And again, this is just about fine tuning until you're happy and satisfied with how this looks. And there's a little bit of a shake now in my movement, but it's all good. It works. All right, so once we have that lined up, the next thing that we're gonna wanna do is to go ahead and, if you want to, you can go ahead and fade this out so it looks like the transition is already in play. So once it gets to about right about here, you can go ahead and set another opacity keyframe, and then right about here, we can go ahead and start fading him off completely, so you have something like that. And again, the original clip or the freeze frame underneath can stop at the position right about here, so it kind of looks like something like this, and then it kind of just disappears. And again, you might want that to last a little bit longer. Okay, because the other clip is going to come in and that transition is going to happen as that is fading out. So it's almost going to be like a smoke and mirrors effect. You're not really going to notice it, and it feels like it went through it, but it really didn't. Cool, so we have that. The next thing that I typically did, the next thing that I did was to go ahead into the eye image, duplicate that eye image, and let's set the blending mode to overlay. It just went ahead and knocked out some additional components to the eye. And again, that opacity on the bottom version might come back to like 60%. And then on that next keyframe, again, push it to 60%. So now you have something that looks like that, right? All right, so we have this shot set up, freeze frame goes in and then fades out. So that's pretty much how we set up the initial parameter. Alrighty guys, and the last quick tip that we're gonna use just on the eye version or on the eye transition is to just add a little bit of an additional blur. I'm not really satisfied with the blur that you get in After Effects on this one, and typically I'm fine with it, but in this case we're gonna force a bit of motion blur and just cause our computer to really hate us. So if you go ahead and clip that, and we're gonna do it to the extent of the transition, so right about here, and then you can go ahead and turn your blur layer off and clip it right there. So cool. And all right, we added force motion blur. If you want to, you can go ahead set your samples to something like 16 and 240, something just a little bit more to help that blur really kind of blow out a little bit and really sell the effect. So cool. You've got this, going through the eye effect done. So now that we have the eye transition down, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move into building the actual wall itself. We're gonna go ahead and skip over the actual footage component. We'll come back to that afterwards. Let's get all the other stuff knocked out. So, all right, wall. First thing that we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna create a really, really, really big canvas. Something like 6,000 in width by, let's just go 13,000 in height. We're gonna call this wall artboard. New for my sake. Okay, 10 seconds I think works. That's fine. 24 frames a second. Good to go. And yeah, if I zoom back out to like 12.5%, this is what we get. All right, so cool. What we're gonna wanna do is go up into our assets and make sure that we highlight our images. And what we're gonna wanna do is bring onto the canvas all of our images and kind of sort them out and feather them a little bit. So go ahead, and there's this one called Daniel Von Appen, whatever. You'll see it when I drop it on here. So it's gonna look like this, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring this down a little bit to right about there. We're gonna duplicate that guy. Go ahead, right click, hit transform, go ahead and flip horizontally so we can line that back up with the other side, something like that. Cool, so, all right. Yeah, that looks good. Let's go see what we have up here. We've got some other really cool building-y looking things. Okay, so let's go to that other Daniel one. Let's drop that sucker on here. Let's bring him down to right about there. Maybe tuck him underneath so all of that other stuff is hidden. Might do that. Duplicate the layer. Again, right click, transform. Can start masking and feathering some of this stuff out. So like, let's say this one we want to delete, this one we want to kind of mask into the others a bit more. So let's take something like this and let's bring it up, and let's just say for the sake of this we want to kind of mask in right here, going back down, right back over. I don't know. I'm just doing this really rough, guys. I don't want to spend too much time on this because the technique is pretty much straightforward. Oops. All right, so cool. We've got something like that, and then we're going to go ahead and let's feather this image a bit so that it feathers down into our other one. Bring him, let's bring him back on top now, and let's drop him down so it kind of bleeds into the other a little bit. And again, a lot of this is going to be smoke and mirrors because you're not going to see a lot of these gaps because of the motion blur, right? You're going to see a lot of this stuff hidden. So yeah, that looks pretty good. Again, it doesn't have to be flawless and perfect. So let's scale back out to like 25%, see what we got. Okay, cool, looks good. Let's go to maybe our next one. Let's drop this guy on here. This is what we got. So if I was to zoom in at 100%, this is kind of what we're going to have the null move across. So it's gonna move all the way over here and then transition up into somewhere like that and then bring up into here. And it's gonna have a lot of playroom, and then it's gonna end up on one of these little areas right here where we zoom into, and that will end our transition. So if you go back to like 12%, you can kind of see again what our artboard looks like. Again, it doesn't fill the whole thing, but that's fine, it doesn't need to. It's just kind of giving us the space that we need to kind of move everything across. So cool, we've got our artboard. So now let's go ahead and create our wall transition. We're gonna create a new composition, and this is going to be wall composition. And I don't know, movement, whatever the heck you guys wanna call it. Now this is gonna be 1920 by 1080, and we're gonna move it over the span of probably like something similar, like 10 seconds. Okay, cool. Wall artboard, we have that. Go ahead and drag your wall artboard into a new composition right down here. I called mine wall composition and movement, motion, camera, whatever you wanna call it. Okay, cool. Once you have that in there, the first thing that you're gonna wanna do is to create a null, and we're gonna title this wall motion, or whatever you wanna call it. Wall motion null is cool too. Okay, now we're gonna wanna parent it to that null because that null is gonna handle all of the motion. So if we zoom in here and we go ahead and select our position and then move over here to a minute and then slide this sucker out, we're gonna swing him over there. He's gonna start that way, and then maybe around here, he's gonna start coming up a little bit more. And then he might even start drifting over a little bit more, and then we want him to end at like a no. Might want him to end right back over here. All right, so right about here. All right, so cool. We have this set up, and now we have our end goal set up. So it looks kind of crappy, right? It does some weird stuff. So the first thing that we're gonna wanna do is go in and look at our curve a little bit on our wall motion. So if you go out and you scroll out a little bit, you can see how the null's being handled. And you can go over to this curve and we can kind of flatten that out so it doesn't pick our footage up too far, because we don't want that to happen. We want our footage to stay pretty level. So the initial, yep, and it's still flying. So we want the initial one to kind of stay flat, and then as it turns, it's going to make this kind of motion right here. So we get maybe right about here, we pull him back to here. So he shoots this way, and then over time. So cool, that looks good. Something like that for now, and then we'll fix the speed of it here in a minute. All right, so cool, we have this looking like that. All right, looks good, 50%. Let's see what we got. All right, awesome. Now we might have to, All right, so let's go to our last keyframe, and the first thing that the second thing we're gonna wanna do is go ahead. I'm really trying not to say this is the first thing anymore, but it's kind of my go-to, so whatever. I don't really care anymore. All right, so cool. We're gonna pick up the pace here a little bit. Boom, something like that. Might even bring you out here. All right, so mine ends right about here, and the next thing that we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna go ahead and create our cut. It's good to go ahead and make sure that this is positioned as center as it can be, because we're gonna create a camera and that's gonna start controlling our Z movements, or our Z depth, Z space movement. Okay, cool, so we have this movement, everything looks good, awesome. Happy with what we got. Again, guys, this is really rough, so do it and fine tune it on your own. All right, but once we have that, we're gonna duplicate our wall artboard. We're gonna call this our matte layer, and then we are gonna go ahead and cut out our door. So go ahead and mask that out as best you can, and then boom, you've got this, looks really good. All right, cool. All right, there's our door. If I soloed this door, boom, you're gonna see that's the door cut out. And if you go ahead and select alpha matte, invert matte, and it's gonna basically punch a hole in your area now. So when it lands, boom, you're gonna have that hole right there. All right, so the next thing you're gonna wanna do, duplicate that matte layer one more time, and this is gonna be called door. Cool. Now you have the door, and you bring that back onto the canvas. So once this lands, it's going to open up right about here, and let's go ahead and set a position keyframe, boom, right here, and then right about here, we want this to move up and off of our canvas. Now, this is the thing. We need to duplicate that matte layer one more time. We're gonna place it above our door, and you could actually leave it below the door, but I'm gonna place it above. I just like mine like that. So, and then invert, and actually I take that back, just alpha track matte it, and you should be good to go. All right, cool. So now you have something that looks like this. Boom, you play that back, and all your masks are kind of operating in full effect. So cool. And we might not have that door move until we start moving in. Okay, so everything's pretty much set up now. We've got our movement and everything's looking good. Our door's opening the way that we want it to. And now we are ready to start setting up our camera and punching in this beast. All right, so here we go. Alrighty guys, so next thing, we are now into the phase where we've got to go ahead and create our camera. Our camera is gonna control all of our Z space movement. And I'm gonna go ahead and create a cam controller, which is basically just another null object. I'm gonna call it cam controller, and I'm going to link my camera to the cam controller. And I'm gonna make that cam controller a 3D object because that's gonna handle all of my motion. That's gonna handle all of my Z space. I don't wanna mess with anything else. So basically, if my position changes on anything in the cam controller, it's going to change everything on anything that's affecting a 3D object. So this is really important. Make sure that all of your wall artboards now and all of those layers below it are 3D objects. Everything has to be 3D in order for this to work and function properly. So we have our cam controller, we have our camera, we have our wall null, and again, the key component is to make sure all of these assets are set to 3D objects now. So once these are 3D objects, I can start moving into that canvas. Now here's the cool thing about a cam controller. If I move anything in Z space, it is going to handle everything. It is going to handle controlling everything else that is actually a 3D object. So I went ahead and added all of those 3D objects to everything that I had underneath them. So that's good news, right? Makes life a lot easier. So I'm gonna place it back into the center. So here's basically what I mean by a cam controller. now I can control and really fine tune my positioning. So as soon as this is kind of moving in, I'm gonna go ahead and set a position keyframe right about here, and I'm gonna move in right about here, and I just want it to kind of move in right there. And we're gonna see what happens. Boom, that looks awesome, right? Now we're not gonna handle any of our speed just yet. We're just gonna start slowly moving things into play. Now that we've kind of moved that into play, we can start building our next scene. All right, so there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can create them in different scenes and actually control them differently that way, or you can build them right here. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm just gonna do this a little bit rough and dirty. That's what she said, Michael Scott. But basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and set up the component underneath right here. So on all of those assets that are below where the camera moves, let's go ahead and clip those. So now we keep our timeline very clean and organized. So boom, our camera moves in. Right now, our second scene pretty much takes over. So let's go ahead and let's grab our first asset and let's place that image on the canvas. So let's go ahead and do scene 2, image 1, and then let's scale this dude down. Let's move him over here somewhere like that. Again, we're gonna make him a 3D object. He needs to be scaled and then position. Now here's the key, guys. We need to take a look at our position, and it's always good to go ahead and make notes of where those positions are. So we started at 0, we've ended at 974. So we know that our second scene position needs to be back here in order for it to make sense for the camera, right? So look, like as our camera's moving in, we need our Z space to be, I think something like right about there looks pretty good. And we're gonna wanna go ahead and move him up a little bit, and that looks good. Because basically what we're going to do, and go ahead and scale him back up a little bit so there's no black space once that opens up. All right, so now that we have that, and right there, we still need to clean that position. All right, cool. All right, so something like that looks really good. Depending on, and again, you're just gonna have to slowly fine tune this and clean this up a little bit more. So we're gonna slow the camera down right about here, right? And right behind this scene, we're gonna go ahead and build this a little bit more. Let's go ahead and drop in this Matthew one. This is scene 2, image 2 background. And this dude, again, is going to be a 3D layer, and we're going to place him in position in Z space way further back, not way further back, but further back than we do here, because we want that nice parallax effect. So we have something right about there that looks pretty good. And again, we can scale this down a little bit more just to kind of clean it up and make it look really good. If you want to, go ahead and add in some curves, and let's drop that beast so it kind of darkens that background a little bit more, and then maybe do the same thing to our scene 1. Let's add some curves and just really deepen down those tones a little bit more. Okay, cool. So we have something that kind of looks like this, right? So again, we know that we want our camera to continue to move forward, but we want it to slow down right about there. So as our camera's doing that, let's go ahead and move him in. We're gonna move our camera in right about there over time. And this is really where we're gonna be able to kind of focus in on fixing the position of our image, right? So let's go to image 1, and again, we're gonna kind of move him over a little bit more. We're gonna bring him back up, and right about there looks pretty good. So we need to go back, and we need to kind of chase the camera back and make sure that we don't have any issues. We see at the bottom there, at the very bottom right here, we're having some issues. So we wanna go ahead and scale our image back up so it fills that space a little bit more. So right there, what is that, 43? Let's go to 40, yeah, 43. Okay, cool. So if I play this back now, all right, now we've got a little bit of a position issue again. Let's go ahead and fix that. Drag him back in, drag him back up, scale him back out, see what we got here. All right, looks really good. He fades in, he kind of zooms in. Now we know that we can control that and move our camera beyond that, and that will work perfectly. Now it's gonna reveal our image that's behind there, but that's okay, because right at this point where our first image kind of breaks on, what we're gonna do is for that second image, we're gonna go ahead and cut it right there. So when it gets through it, there's nothing behind it. So cool little parallax effect, right? Looks really good. And one trick too is to go ahead, you can kind of see it behind the wall, is to go ahead and start setting your transparencies on these. So you can set your opacity to like to 0. And then as soon as it kind of starts moving in, this needs to be at 100. And you could start finagling and, you know, kind of tweaking this stuff out accordingly too. But anyways, just a thought starter as we're kind of moving through this. All right, guys, so now that we have our camera, we have everything looking good, first thing that we're gonna wanna do is let's go ahead and hide this scene behind, and to clean up our first image a little bit, let's go ahead back right about here. We want to solo the layer, and we're going to create a little bit more of an edge around our building to kind of make it feel a little bit more natural. So let's go ahead and take our pen tool and let's start cutting some edges out, clean up some of those areas, leap some of that, and just really kind of make it look and feel more like a building, you know, and not so much like an image. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just something adds a whole lot. So if you just kind of come up here and then go down to your masks and hit subtract, it does a really good job at just kind of adding a little bit more depth to it. So if you go back to 100% and you see our image now, it looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and turn on our second image, and yeah, it looks a little bit better, right? Like, and you could clean up right about here and, you know, kind of really make that look a whole lot better. Just something like that, right? Okay, cool. So if I go back and we preview this, we just bring this sucker right into about there. Let's see what we got. Boom. Okay, cool. So we're gonna slow our camera down. We just want him to kind of, awesome, pick up right. And again, because we moved that, we're gonna have to bring that out just a little bit more. So right about there, and then we're good. Okay, cool. All right, now, next part, let's go ahead and transition out of this area. So go ahead and duplicate this, and again, we're gonna call this matte. And now what you're gonna wanna do is go into your mask path properties and delete that mask. The only mask that you're gonna want in this particular area is the mask that for that's gonna knock out the area that we need to become the inversion mats, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of confusing, but just bear with me. Okay, cool. So if you notice right now, it's knocked out the back area, right? So you can see through it now, which is really good. But one of the things that we can go ahead and do really quick on our scene to the background image, is so we don't see through it, let's go ahead and mask out this area so it just sits right here. So if you go to this section, let's go ahead and create a mask, and we are just going to basically, nope, what the hell? All right, basically right here. All right, cool. Now we have this mask around our background layer. And again, we can go ahead and move this back over here. And what that mask is doing is just allowing that that background image to show through in just that area that we want it to see it. So now we have our window cut out and we can actually see through it. So in Z space, we don't see this background, even though it creates that parallax effect, right? So, all right, cool. This is really good news because it means now we can add our third and final kind of transition underneath it. Guys, so basically we have everything set up and everything's looking really good. Now, the first thing that we're gonna wanna go ahead and do is take our matte layer and let's go ahead and duplicate our matte layer. We can turn it back on. It's no longer using this as a reference for our matte. So let's go ahead and if you'll notice, right up here in the top, we have this, and actually I'm gonna call this window left. And we're gonna go ahead and fix our matte. So if we go ahead and select mask, let's go ahead and pull this sucker in to only kind of be focused in on that left-hand side of our window. So cool, we have that set up. And then we want to go ahead and select the layer and we wanna select our pan behind tool, grab our anchor point and put it at the pivot point for the left-hand part of the window. Now what we're gonna do is go ahead and set our rotation on that. And I believe it's the Y part of the rotation, yeah. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and set a rotation point right here. And then right here, we want that to kind of move all the way out like that. Now, you'll see some dark spot. That's because my corner is not exactly where I need it to be. I need to move that corner all the way over to that flush left to that where that mask ends. So now if I do it, it looks really good. So cool. Something like that. Now let's go ahead and highlight easy ease for the sake of making it look really good. Let's go ahead and set motion blur up on all of our scene layers so that our camera can control some nice motion. And let's look at it at 100%. And boom, we're looking good. So that's our right window. Cool. All right, let's duplicate our matte again. Duplicate. Now we're gonna go ahead and select, this is window right. Okay, cool. So F9, easy ease those bad boys. And now we have some windows opening up and we are out of frame right about there. How sick is that, guys? So here's the thing. Let's go ahead and drop down underneath, again, putting our drone shot down there. And let's go ahead and slide him over to where the windows kind of start opening up. All right, cool. Let's cruise back out and let's see what we got. All right, so it's cruising, boom. Wow, looks really cool. Now again, for the sake of the original tutorial, I added in some smoke layers in the background. So if you want to, you can go ahead and dump in some smoke. There are also some birds. So for the sake of, I don't really think that we need to go over the birds. I think we all kind of got that. You mask the birds up here into this area. You set it according to the Z space, set it as a 3D object, and boom, you're kind of good to go with adding all of that in. The last part of this, guys, is building out the title sequence. Now, here's the trick. I built mine in Element 3D. Benn TK does not use Element 3D, or never has he ever used Cinema 4D or Element 3D. He was just recently asked that on one of his stories, and he replied, and it absolutely dumbfounded me, and I am still blown away. But anyways, that being said, we're gonna build it in Element 3D, and then, you know, for those of you who don't have Element 3D, you can build it the same way that Benn TK does it. Use an image, and then use an extrusion, you know, kind of component using the renderer up here. You could use your Cinema 4D renderer and set an extrusion to the geometry, and then build a 3D component and model that way. Anyways, that being said, we're gonna go ahead and build it the way that I did it, and you know, just kind of add all of the cool elements and then call it a day. So that is part 2. All right, guys, so part 3. We're building this in Element 3D. If you do not have Element 3D, this is not going to work for you. The same techniques can be applied elsewhere. or, you know, if you just used an image in terms of the positioning. So just keep that in mind. And you can always look up and Google how to extrude, you know, images and kind of create that 3-dimensional effect. But for the sake of kind of taking it to the next level a little bit, we're gonna go 3D with it. And yeah, so anyways, new solid, element 3D. Element 3D here, 1920 by 1080. I like a black solid for this. Okay, go ahead and search element 3D. We are gonna go ahead, it's on the canvas now, type in our text. So some kind of chunky font, like a, I don't know how you say this, Babus, whatever. A line in the center of our composition. Let's go back to the character here. I don't like any heavy leading. So yeah, there we go. Gonna go ahead and hit Control, double click, place that in the center of the comp, go ahead and realign everything to the center. Cool, so now we have our Europe text. Let's throw that on the bottom and then we're just gonna hide that. Go to your right on top of your drone shot is where we're gonna put our element 3D layer. Go to scene setup, and this is where we're pretty much gonna go ahead and build everything. Go ahead and hit, I take that back, hit OK. Go to your element 3D, and in your custom layers, we want to go ahead and set that Europe layer below as a custom text path and layer. So go ahead and hit scene setup now and hit extrude, and it should pull out our text. So cool. Now we've got some cool chunky text to work with, and we are in play. So we can extrude it a bit more and, you know, play with some of that. And we should be good to go. All right, cool. I threw on, I believe, the Pro in the, what was it? This was the ground cobblestone. If you have the Pro Shaders pack from Element 3D, cool, you're good to go. All right, so Element 3D can be finicky because it's got its own parameters built inside of animation engine and position properties to kind of set the position of everything. So you'll notice right here, I've got mine set to like 2000 or somewhere right around there. And if I played that back, you kind of see boom. And then what we have to do is we would just have to go to our cam controller and hit U, and then we would have to keep our camera kind of moving through. Now, I set it up to where it was moving through the R. So the position is key here. You can set it up to where it's straight on, and then what you're gonna wanna start doing is, take that back. So go right about here, and then you can kind of start, you can go through the O right here, and you'll see right about here we're centered, and the cam controller starts zooming in on the O right about there. And then what we're gonna wanna do is go ahead and go through that. Let's fix our position to be flawless, and then kind of go through that. And then boom, this is gonna reveal our final. Just gotta tweak it out perfectly here. All right, that's close enough. And then boom, we are out of it. And then we should probably do something right about there. So cool, slows down a little bit, and then yeah, flies in, looks really cool, and boom, looks really good. Now here's really where you're gonna have to tweak out your settings. If you buy the project file, all of my settings are gonna be inside there, guys, that you can look through and kind of fine tune. You can literally go into your Element 3D layer, and underneath it, you can select curves and start kind of, you know, dialing this down a little bit, kind of, you know, bringing out a little bit more of those, you know, colors and whatnot, and color correcting it a little bit more. And then one of the big things obviously is your render settings and your lighting and shadows. Make sure that you guys go through that and play with that. it's really key that you dial those elements in order to get that look that you're going for. But for the sake of this tutorial, guys, I'm not gonna go too deep into all of the Element 3D parameters. There's so many tutorials out there on Element 3D, it's ridiculous. If you guys want me to do one specific on that, I'll do one separate, but there's so many out there that it would just be stupid for me to go through all of this again and do it all over. So anyways, that being said, I wanted to go ahead and tackle some of the important components like masking in our final shot. So let's just, for the sake of this tutorial, let's just go ahead and use an image for our final. And actually, I'm gonna use my bumper video that I used as a, just the promo buffer. So I'm gonna drop that at the bottom. You guys can use whatever clip that you want, image, whatever, it's fine too. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna drop it in underneath the Element 3D layer. And basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna set one on top of the drone. I take that back. We're gonna set this right behind our Element 3D layer, right? And what we're gonna do is we're going to just slide this guy right about here. And then what we can do is we're going to go ahead and start masking this out. So if you go into that clip, that final reveal clip, right? You're going to literally just place a nice little mask around that area because it's literally just gonna sit behind the Element 3D layer, and we're going to go ahead and hit mask path, and we are going to slowly over time just animate that. Oop. All right, so cool. Once we have that set up, so we've got this mask kind of working in our favor, right? So here's the thing. I don't really want that to start immediately. I kind of want that to, fade on. So let's go ahead and select our transparency. We're gonna select our opacity, go ahead and here, and right about here is really when I want it to kind of be full force. So go ahead and select that at 100% and then this at 0. So basically nothing's gonna show up until it gets to that point, and then all of a sudden it's gonna slowly start fading in, and then we're gonna reveal this clip, and then it's gonna kind of move through it. Really important that we go ahead and in our Element 3D layer that we kind of set the motion blur on it. You can do that directly in the motion blur or in the Element 3D layers. It does have a motion blur property that you can use and manipulate right here. So feel free to kind of play with those settings as well. So you kind of see that's how we set this entire guy up to kind of move from start to finish. And yeah, it looks a little wonky because of the way that it's kind of coming in and what's going on in the background, but boom, you've got this kind of going in, boom, and then it's gone. So awesome. So cool, there's the Element 3D title. Now we could again get really intricate, but we're not going to right now. I've got a few other things to hop through for you guys, and that is right about here, there's a hat asset, right? That falls into play. So let's go ahead and right on top of our Element 3D layer, let's go ahead and drag our hat, and then let's title this hat image. Let's go ahead and again make this a 3D layer. We're gonna go ahead and set up our motion blur for it, and then we are going to go ahead and select our position and bring it back to about where our Element 3D layer is. Now again, it's really important to kind of go into your element layer and figure out where your position, your Z settings are, right? So we set this at 2100, and it's really important to figure that out before you do what I did. So now we're gonna have to just eyeball it, which sucks, but it shouldn't be too bad. Okay, so cool. We're gonna come right about, so again, 2100 was where it was at. We're gonna go like 2100 and see what happens. And then we're gonna scale it down. Okay, cool. So now we have our hat, and we're going to see what that does when we kind of move it. Looks pretty close. There's some minor slipping a little bit, but it's not too bad. We'll roll with it. All right, cool. So we want it to land, let's say we want it to land on our R right here. And then let's go ahead and rotate that dude a little bit. Drop him in. Let's add an effect called drop shadow. Boom, we want it to kind of fall out. Distance can kind of come out a little bit, and then we want it to soften up. Nothing crazy, and then we want that to kind of come down a little bit more like that, something like that. So cool. If I go ahead and half this, you see a little bit better. Looks really good. You can play with the opacity right up here, so it's not too overbearing. You know, you don't want anything that looks like that looks like crap, and then you don't want to soften it up too much to where it doesn't exist. So anyways, there's our drop shadow on that image. Now let's go ahead and select a nice little let's go ahead and set some position keyframe and have this sucker fall right on in. So cool. This guy is going to end right there is our ending position. So let's start him up higher. We'll start him off canvas, and then we're going to go ahead and hit some rotation. And let's go back on here and see what. And actually, let's bring our. We need to bring him on a little bit sooner. Maybe like there is really where we want him to fall in. So boom. We want it to be a little bit faster. And then let's go ahead and add some F9 on that sucker. So we got something like that, right? Now we just got to do a simple rotation, and should be good to roll here. So let's bring him down. I don't even know what the hell I'm rotating him on. Not that. It will be Z, the last one. Okay, cool. So right here, let's go ahead and set our rotation keyframe right there, and then right about here, we want him to be at 0, and then maybe 0.5. Nope. Let's see, 0.5. It's gonna do an entire spin. All right, so cool. We have this nice little hat drop thing. And again, I'm not gonna get too crazy with it. Benn TK does something where his hat kind of falls off and then falls back into play. Let's go back up here. We're not gonna do that for this one. It's just a little too much work. All right, let's bring you out here. So boom, and then everything fades in and it all looks good. So now guys, that's pretty much the entirety of, and again, you can kind of see him where he's right here. We don't want that to happen. So what we want to do is just kind of clip him until clip right about there. So now he can't see anything. It falls into play and it looks awesome. Boom. Love it. And again, you could probably play with your curves and speed editor and graph editor and get this thing fine-tuned and dialed in. But guys, that's pretty much it. I mean, with some color correction and some additional compositing and bringing in some third-party assets and whatnot, you can really dial this sucker in and make it look legit and awesome. So there you have it. That is pretty much the bulk of this transition. So now there's your wall composition. So now it's basically bringing all of those assets in together. So let's go back to our, what did we have? We had iComp walkthrough. So okay, so now we have our eye here, right? And then we had our all right, cool. So basically what we need to do is we just need to create one final big, thing with all of our footage and everything together to kind of solidify the deal here. So here's the deal, guys. This tutorial could take literally years of my life, and I could continue to kind of fine tune it. Ben TK's got a really amazing gimbal shot that he goes through at the very end, which he himself has actually done a tutorial on. So I'm not gonna go through it. So whatever you place inside this eye is awesome. If you buy the project file, you can literally dissect exactly how I put everything together from start to finish. So basically what I did is I lined up the eye, and then I brought in the wall composition and movement, and then if you go out right about here in this eye comp 2, we're gonna name this main final transition. And then in the main final transition, you can go ahead and make our composition like 30 seconds long, something stupid like that. All right, cool. Once you get to the eye, we can clip that right there. Oops, clip it right there. All right, cool. And now we have our wall transition. And again, our footage can go inside of here. So our gimbal shot literally transitions on. We use some opacity techniques. Gimbal shot goes right here, and then it turns to the wall, and then kind of moves into our other footage that kind of fades out right here. So guys, that is pretty much it. I know that it's not from start to finish everything, but it should give you guys everything that you need in order to accomplish not only amazing masking techniques, but some really, really amazing two-dimensional image techniques that really can help sell your creatives and put you on a whole nother level. So anyways, that does it for me, guys.
The last thing I want to do is I want to give a shout out to all of the creatives who have been following me so far, and I want to give you guys mad love. First and foremost, and you guys who are done with the tutorial, that's fine, but I'm going through these dudes and I'm giving them high fives. Just Jackie Films, thank you so much for your support, bro. You have been awesome and nothing but encouraging. Say Something Productions is my boy, I'm Ian. That's my boy Ian out in Austin, Texas. He does some phenomenal work. Go check him out. I've got Juan Fernino, Stefane K, Andres Visuals, bro. You're my boy. Thank you for being so encouraging. Let's see here. Tim. It's Tim Kim. Dude, awesome creative. Dude, you're crushing it. KDP Productions, my boy here in Jacksonville, doing a great job. Duncan Smith, thank you so much. Alan, Boy, and then my buddy Connor Miller, who's just been such an encouraging local creative who's crushing it on Instagram. Chris, I don't know how to say your last name. I think it's Gersh, Chris Gersh. I don't know, bro, but right here, got you. All you guys, man, y'all have just been phenomenal and so encouraging. And I'm Ted, Ray, Carpio, Pee-wee, got you, bro. All you guys, man, thank you so much for all the support. If I missed anybody that I promised to give a shout out to, call me out on social media, and I promise I'll make a video especially for you, and make sure the whole world knows about it. Send me some footage and I'll do a free comp for you. All right, guys, that's it. Next, I can't wait to see you guys next time. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. So you guys take care, stay creative, and we'll see you next time.